Assalamu alaikum. Happily returning to Kitab Tawheed. As I mentioned, if you scroll through my 500 lessons, you will find within the past few years things from Kitab Tawheed, especially in the past maybe 3 years. But this hadith, I really believe that Allah landed me on this one in the last 10 days. Ashir al-Awakhir in Ramadan, the special 10 days. Because I want to begin with this, I'm going to back up, but I want to begin with this hadith and tell you to get a pen or a pencil and write this down in English if you don't know Arabic. Because this hadith, I think it's the most meaningful hadith ever. And so many people will disagree with it because, Allah already told us most people don't believe. And here it is. Hadith an Abi Musa. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. And remember, this is in the collection of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. Sahih al-Albani. ثلاثة لا يدخلون الجنة. 3 will not enter heaven. They will not. مدمن الخمر. Number 1, the person addicted to intoxicants. Number 2, قاطع الرحم, the person who does not maintain family ties. قاطع means to cut. Rahm means womb. And the biggest and best one in my world is musaddiq bis-sihr, the person who believes in magic. I don't know how long I've been at this obsession that I have. I've tried so many ways to convince people that magic is an illusion. In America, we always knew it was, you see. This is what's so astoundingly, profoundly, majestically perfect about this Kitab Tawheed. It is not caring about your traditions of any of your ancestors, not your fairy tale stories handed down, not even from your beloved grandmother. Because everybody loves grandma more than mom, right? Almost. Because they'd let you do anything. And they always had plentiful supplies of candy, cookies, junk food, my mother would call it. I'm trying to maintain composure here because I'm very much grateful. Ana mina shakirin ya Rab, shakura ya Rab, that you let this land on the second day of the last 10 days of Ramadan. And although some may say, well, I don't follow the Hanbali madhab, I don't follow Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, I am whatever. I don't even want to say these words on my tongue about the madahib and the salaf. No. All I want to do is reiterate, and I'm going to reiterate again, and then go on with details. And Abi Musa called. Should I go back and see if there's any more uns? Because for you, no, there are not. Not that you're hadith scholars anyway. The isnad for you it means the narrators. No, let's just say an Abi Musa. ثلاثة لا يدخلون الجنة. 3 will never enter paradise. Number one, the person addicted to khamar. Khamar is any form of intoxicant, whether it be wine, beer, the hard stuff, the alcohol, the whiskey, the vodka, the gin, or wine is khamar because it's an intoxicant. Now, I know some of you are going to stop me and say, oh, well, I only had a glass of wine. There's differences of opinion among scholars about that. But then again, there's another hadith of Prophet Muhammad that says, what is intoxicating in its nature in a small portion, then stay away from it altogether. And there's wisdom in that, because you might think you can handle a glass of wine, and Allah knows that you're the type that's going to become addicted. Now, you see, in my case, I could always handle a glass of wine, and I always stopped at 2. But I usually just had 1, and I never wanted more because I don't have an addictive personality with intoxicants. Cakes, cookies, and pies and candy, yes. You see, this is why I digress, and I don't call it digression. I call it elucidation, elaboration. I want you to understand Arabic. So when Allah says the person addicted to an intoxicant, whether it be prescription pills or any form of pills or any form of an intoxicant. What is an intoxicant? Something that clouds your mind. Khamar, because khamara means to cover over. Now, for instance, that's why I did this, you say. Is this a khimar? Well, not really. It's a scarf that I just put over my other color just to make it look in a different way. Well, it's not a total khimar because it's only covering some of your head. Khamara means to cover over. So if your mind is clouded and you're not 100% the way you are when you're sober, then it's khamar. Now, depending upon how much of it you imbibe will depend upon how drunk you get or how out of it you get. So when Allah says here, the mudmin means addicted to. So by virtue of Arabic, if you know Arabic, you have to be addicted to it in order to be in this classification that you're never going to enter heaven, because by default, if you are addicted to it, you're not going to be thinking straight and you're going to miss your prayers and you are going to sin because you're out of it. That's the addict. And that's what our sorry youth have been plagued with in America right now. And Allah did it. See, we're not going to blame China. We're not going to blame the mafia. We're not going to blame the poor guy on the street corner who doesn't have work and he deals in drugs because he's trying to feed himself and his family. I don't care if you say baby mamas, unwed mom. I don't care. This is the state of affairs we're in now. It's not just the big cartels. It's not just anything or anyone. It's a curse that Allah has allowed to befall America. And so now you're going to be blaming everyone right and left, and you're going to become paranoid, and you're going to become estranged from your very own selves. You won't even know who you are anymore. I'll add to this, of course, not to Allah's words, but Prophet Muhammad has told us 3, so we're going to stick to these 3, but I just might add riba, because usury, interest, is the worst. And Allah says you will lose your minds if you deal in it. He's already said that. You're going to lose your minds. Touched by Satan is how it's phrased. Just couldn't resist to give you that one. Number 2, qatiya ar-rahim. Now, from what I hear from the elders, now I'm one of them, all my elders are dead, but it was quite the thing back in the day that you would visit grandma's house And it was usually always every week. Of course, the house would be your dad's family, because that's just the way it was. I told you the Irish and the Arabs have a lot in common with this dad thing. And even though Prophet Muhammad said Omek Thoma Omek Thoma Omek 3 times, when he was asked, who is Ahsan Sohba? Now you have to know Arabic to understand what that means. It's not saying the best, it's saying Ahsan Sohba, the one you should hang around and be around. And Sohba, you know, the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. Why were they called the Sahaba? Because they were always around Prophet Muhammad. So when he was asked, who should be my Ahsan Sohba? It goes for men and women. He answered, your mother. Asked again, your mother. Asked again, your mother, then your father. So you see, the reason for this is, not only is it because Prophet Muhammad said so, it's because that's where you're going to get the mercy that Allah put out of all his mercy in the hearts of the mothers. See, it all makes sense. It all comes full circle. When you know your religion, there's no contradictions in it. As the enemies love to say, oh, I found this doesn't mean that. Oh, you're just so ignorant. Go home and study Arabic, then come back to me. Oh, these enemies of Allah, we know very well who they are. I'm fasting. It's your mother. And that's why Satan, Satan loves to destroy the relationship between mother and child. I think the Beatles had a song. The mother and child illusion is only a notion away. Anyway, enemies abound. They're everywhere. They'll never go away. And you'll never be able to fight them without the words of Allah, without the Quran, and without being certain of the words, because there's so much out there now with the internet, the AI, ChatGPT, all these beautiful women that they're all AI'd and they all look like beauty queens and they're trying to teach you politics. Right before I started this lesson, one of them just told me that Gracie Mansion in New York is evacuated. You know, it's like the White House, but it's for the mayor and, you know, the whole thing. I don't know. I don't know. I like her channel, but, you know, why is it that all of these influencers now are beautiful young women? And you almost never see ugly old men that I grew up with on the TV channels. You know, I don't have to go on and on about that. You get it. So don't cut womb ties, or you're not going to the paradise. And the last, which is my favorite, it's my own chosen idol that I have adopted as my own chosen idol to attack and disassemble and break, is the sihr idea. Magic. It's translated as magic, right? But we have to go into the Arabic more. When we grew up, we were exposed to sleight of hand, card tricks. It was always the men that were into it too. It was never the women. And I remember my uncles, oh, watch this, and they'd flip the card around and make things disappear, and the bottle caps under the glass. Or my dad would love to flip heads and tails. He'd take a nickel or a quarter, and he would teach us how to choose when we had to decide among all the 8 children who's going to do what and what. He's Irish. I don't consider my dad a kafir. My dad never heard about Islam. But he had all of the bad qualities that come from the Irish. And one of them, the 2 biggies, drinking and gambling. So I'm not disparaging my dad. He didn't know any better. We'd play heads and tails. And I think it was a nickel or a quarter, I forgot. And he'd put it like on his knuckle. And he'd say, okay, choose, heads or tails. And then he'd flip it. And it would land right back down on his knuckle. He was a pro on this. And If you said heads and it was heads, you'd get it. Okay, we're going to go to Dairy Queen and get ice cream. Otherwise, you lose. I was raised on this stuff. And I always knew it was absolute nonsense. And I used to really dislike seeing my dad do things like that because my dad was my hero. You know, every little girl, her dad is her Prince Charming. But I think that made me so aware of it, of how ridiculous it was, because I always had that little, I don't know how to say it. Why do I always say little when I refer to myself? Because I was always small. I was very petite as a child. And then when I reached puberty, I stopped being petite, but I stayed short, 5'2". So whenever I'm thinking about myself, I think about myself as a smaller version of the women, except for here. And that's what misled the men and the boys. They never really listened. They just looked. And that's men. So I had all of these analogies simultaneously working in my mind to let me see clearly. To let me see clearly. There was a song called I Can See Clearly Now, the Rain Is Gone. I think I'll make a lesson about that because it deserves a whole lesson. It's very Islamic. So many of our pop hits were Islamic, but we didn't know what Islam was. Now, I did do 2 years ago in Ramadan a series about the opposite, all the bad things that we got from films and music and just our life, being raised up at that time in America. You would enjoy it if you want to look through my channel. I call it Perverting Our Good Instincts. I have many titles of the channel, but, you know, I'll just give you a little taste. I did Frank Sinatra's song My Way and how horrible that is for a person's soul. And then I did the Elvis hit, Are You Lonesome Tonight? Well, there you go. You know, all of the idols were broken. I thought that's what I was doing 2 years ago in Ramadan when I was living in Jacksonville, Florida. I thought I was doing something beneficial for my people. Because as I told you, this is for reverts, converts, Americans, English speakers, because if you're an Arabic native, well, of course you can listen to my channel, but you already ought to know so much that this might seem elementary for you. Or maybe you like to practice your spoken English conversation with me. It's really a one-way street, though. So we're going to end this now. I'm going to use my last couple of minutes on why is sihr my favorite topic. Because it's misunderstood, and especially in Egypt, you know, that I love so much, that country. Remember, my son was born there. So I love Egypt. But if there's one place that is under the boots of the satanic idea called magic, it's Egypt, because nobody tries to get them out of it. And they just keep this old tired, oh, but the Prophet Muhammad was Mashoor. He was a victim of sihr. No, Prophet Muhammad was confused about which wife he was with that night. That's all. It's specifically a human attribute that we can get confused. And that's what that hadith was about. I get confused about what I made for dessert last week. And I'm saying, did I make those cupcakes? Or should I do this week a pie or something? Really? And now you're attributing it to some satanic influence that Prophet Muhammad was subject to use it as an excuse that magic is real? No, it is not real. And every time it's mentioned in the Quran, it's mentioned along with kufr. So I like to keep these lessons 20 minutes. The only way that you're going to be straight is to read Quran. If you're going to read in English, that's fine. But I suggest you kick it up a notch and start learning Arabic. But you're not going to do that probably successfully unless you're Muslim, because we do have some scholars who say they know Arabic and then they didn't become a Muslim, so I don't believe them. They don't really know Arabic. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. I've enjoyed giving it to you. And we're going to stay in this book of Tawheed. I don't think I'm going to number the lessons anymore, though, because it's getting to, I told you I have a weakness with numbers, so I get mixed up. But I'm going to stay with this about the Najum for the next lesson, too. The stargazing and the star believing, worshiping, and horoscope and all of that. We'll do another lesson right away about that. But I'm not going to number it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.